The tariff announcements and policy updates out of the White House have been changing rapidly, so we wanted to give you an overview of everything that's happened since January 20th. CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady has more on this. Kelly, what you got?
I got a roller coaster for you, Lindsay, okay? So I just want to take you through all this because just hours after he was sworn in, President Trump announced a plan to tariff Canadian and Mexico goods by 25% for not stopping migrants and fentanyl from coming across the U.S. border. Now, days later, he signed an executive order setting those tariffs in motion, along with a blanket 10% tariffs on Chinese imports. Remember that. We're coming back to that. But just before those Canada and Mexico tariffs were supposed to go into effect, the president pressed pause for 30 days because both countries promised steps to address Trump's border concerns. The China tariffs, though, they still started on March 4th. Now, let's go to the next one. The following week, Trump issued proclamations declaring a 25% tariff on aluminum and steel imports would begin in March. Fast forward to March 4th, when the delayed tariffs against Canada and Mexico went into effect, and then Trump increased levies against China to 20%. Remember, we're going from 10 to 20 there. In response, China and Canada imposed 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of imported U.S. goods, such as orange juice. Now, the backlash from the Canada and Mexico tariffs going into effect was followed by the White House modifying a few details. So it delayed tariffs on imported cars from Canada and Mexico by a month. It also exempted some Canadian and Mexican imports that comply with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreements. That's what we just talked about in the last block, all right? So then, on March 12th, in response to steel and aluminum tariffs going into effect, the EU and Canada announced billions of dollars worth of retaliatory tariffs targeting everything from computers to bourbon, like key exports from the U.S. The next tariff from the Trump administration came on March 24th with a 25% tariff on all countries that buy Venezuelan oil. And 2 days later, Trump formally announced a 25% tariff on all vehicles and auto parts shipped to the United States. Then that takes us, live TV, there we go, finally came up. Then that takes us the last few days. All right, President Trump introduces widespread reciprocal tariffs as high as 34% on about 90 countries and even some uninhabited islands. China responds to that with its own 34% tariff on U.S. imports. Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt confirmed the U.S. would add an additional 50% tariff to China, bringing the total tariffs on Chinese imports to 104%. And Wednesday, China announced it was raising its tariff rate on U.S. imports to 84%. And then the EU approved tariffs on over $20 billion worth of U.S. goods. That brings us to right now. If you are still on this roller coaster with me, the U.S. announced a 125% tariff on China and is reducing those reciprocal tariffs down to 10% for 90 days. Lindsay, are you dizzy yet?
It's been a journey. Kelly, thank you. One of the biggest beneficiaries of these reciprocal tariffs may actually be the U.S. resale market. So that's according to a new report from Vogue Business. The reasoning is industries like fashion may see higher prices as companies pay more to bring in imported products. So consumers may look instead toward secondhand sellers to get better bang for their buck, buying stuff that's already here. Manish Chandra joins us now. He's the founder and CEO of social marketplace Poshmark. Manish, I bought and sold a lot on your site. Thanks for being here. Is that your read of the situation, that secondhand sites like yours could stand to benefit from the current climate?
Well, secondhand is here to stay. And when we think of secondhand, the products are already here in the United States. They're sitting in your closet, so they are already ready and available, and they are high quality. So we do think that resale offers a real meaningful alternative to buying from retail. And perhaps tariffs could accelerate the adoption of resale across the country.
Well, Poshmark also operates in Canada, Australia, and India. So how could your overseas businesses be affected by all this?
Well, each of our countries is domestic. So Canadians buy from Canadians, US buy from US. So they're really, our business is kind of independent of the imports that are happening in the country. So even if you buy a product that was originally made abroad, today you're buying it from another seller in US. And that's really powerful to think about because you're taking a dollar. First of all, you're saving it because these things are typically much cheaper. Second, you're saving the environment. Third is you're putting the money in the pocket of somebody else who is selling from their closet. So we think of resale, particularly fashion resale, is something that's both great for the economy, great for the environment, and great for society.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point because, if I'm not going to go shop in my own closet, maybe I can save a little money by going to you. I do want to ask you, though, because home goods is, I think, another one that people will purchase on your site. Would President Trump's tariffs make these products more expensive as well?
Well, I think tariff picture, as you just pointed out, is changing. So it's a constantly evolving picture. But I do think that the broader implication of buying from each other is really conserving trillions of dollars of goods that we've already purchased that are sitting in our country, sitting in our closet, sitting in our home. And by transacting them, we are, first of all, living in a more sustainable future. But second of all, the kind of products that you can buy are very contemporary, very trendy. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Right now, things that are hot and trendy on Poshmark are very much of what is happening. So for example, products related to Masters Golf are up 62% last week. Products related to platform sandals are up 132%. Related to Coachella, which is coming up and actually happening. So when we start to think of these things, you can actually find items. You can build your closet from multiple items and then maybe add one or two new items to kind of spruce it up.
Well, I see how you would be seeing a big influx of sellers if things slowed down. But let's say that the economy slowed to a real crawl. Where are the buyers going to come from?
Well, I think the great thing about selling from your closet is that every person in America has a closet. And what you can do is first by selling something, you can make room and then buy something. So what we saw at the beginning of COVID was first people started to list a lot of items. And then as their closet started to move, you had this buy-sell sort of cycle that's happening. And, even today, even when I see something that gets sold, it's so easy to just turn around and use those proceeds for something to buy. So that circular part of the economy, I think, can be very helpful if the customers and consumers' wallet is under pressure, which it could be in the future.
Manish Chandra, you'll never see platform sandals in my search history, but I'm glad it's popular for you guys. Thank you so much for your time. Let's go back to our viewer questions, get some more answers. Here's a simple one. Why is my 401k dissolving?
I'll take that.
Yeah.
Because you own some stocks. You own stock index funds. And, it's so weird when I get these questions about retirement because people will say to me, if you're younger, it's not a big deal. But what if I'm 65 and I'm really going to retire in 2 years?
Still doesn't feel like not a big deal to me. I'm far from retirement age.
I get that. But I mean, I think that you have a different perspective. When you know you're going to be retiring within the next few years, it feels really scary. It really does. And I think the mind shift is we want people to really think about retirement, not like just the day you retire. Like, I am retiring on April 15th. Goodbye. I'm done. No, my retirement period will probably last 20 or 30 years. So even if you're on the precipice of needing some of your money, I think that the good news is you can still be a long-term investor. So one of the things that's happened in the last couple of weeks is that we've all gotten this extraordinarily good lesson in risk. Because I guarantee you, the person who wrote that question, or you, on February 19th, would not be saying to me, I'm just so nervous that the market will drop. That was when the S&P 500 made a new all-time high. And what we want people to do is, as my dad was a trader, and one of his favorite sayings was, you have to become a seasoned investor. And I would say, well, Daddy, how do you become a seasoned investor? He goes, well, you see how your mother seasons a piece of meat. She whops it with a mallet. That's how you season, and that's how you become a seasoned investor.
That's tenderizing.
And he said to me, what happens is, as an investor, you have to get whacked over the head. You have to get whacked over the head a few times to learn how far you've gone. Are you taking too much risk? Is this something you cannot stomach going forward? I think it is well worth everybody's time to interrogate how you really felt over the last month. Because if you're honest with yourself, maybe you shouldn't be 100% in the stock index fund. Maybe you should have a little less risk. That's okay. But you can't cry on the way up to say, oh, I wish I were more in stocks, and then cry on the way down because I'm all in stocks.
But there's no way to avoid any kind of loss.
Well, listen.
It's just how much loss are you willing to tolerate?
Put it this way. You could be 100% in a money market account in your 401k. The problem is that won't keep up with inflation over time. And so the whole point of investing is to put a dollar to work so it works harder than the inflation rate. That is what all the game is. You want to exceed, you want your money to grow faster than the inflation rate. So the problem with being an investor is it requires this very unnerving condition as a human being, uncertainty. And that you have to take in. You have to be willing to take that ride. When you buy your ticket to be an investor, when you put that money in that 401k, you're on the ride.